Hello everyone, it's Addie from Whimsy of Things, and today is a new pen day for me after saving up for several months and it finally coming back in stock. I have purchased this. In this box is a Mag 650 fountain pen, which is a Gold Spot Pens exclusive. Description on the site says, drawing inspiration from highly sought after vintage writing instruments of the 1940s and 50s, the Magna Carta Mag 650 combines a soft, flexible writing experience with appealing stacked resin in a comfortable tapered profile. When I originally saw the announcement for this pen, I had already been interested in getting a Mag 600 in the stacked resin. I like the vintage look of it. Seeing a video for the Mag 600 back in last November was what really sparked my interest in flex pens overall. So I knew that one day I would probably break down and get one of these. Then when the 650 came out, and it also had the stacked resin and a few other improvements, as well as a color I really liked, I decided to save up and purchase it. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the pen? So it comes packaged in this box. It comes with a warranty card, and the warranty is 5 years. I don't understand this situation exactly here. What purpose does this serve? This is not holding the pen in. The pen was fine. It came fine. And this doesn't pull out either. So anyway, it's a box. It goes in the closet. Put that to the side. And this is the pen. Before I get started talking about the pen, I want to just mention that this pen was purchased with my own money. Any opinions that I have about this pen are 100% based on what I'm experiencing here. The colorway for this pen is called Cyan Ick. And as you can see, it is a stacked resin. There are some sparkles in here, and you can just sort of barely feel the texture of that stacked resin, but it's very smooth. It's got gold hardware on the outside. The finial is just plain. And this is plain back here, just plain. The clip is decently springy. I think it would hold. It's not extremely tight either. It is a pen with a screw closure, so it looks like it's almost 2 turns. The nib is 14 karat gold, and you can see it's got the Magna Carta logo on it, and it is an ebonite feed. The filling system on this is a converter, and it's just a standard converter. This is a Schmidt converter. One thing to note about the filling system, the Gold Spot website does mention that it can be converted to an eyedropper fill if you are interested in that. I tend to avoid that myself, but that is a possibility other than the converter that's in there. The finish is very nice. I think it feels comfortable. Does not post. It's wiggly, so I would say this is not postable, but it has a pretty good length even when you're holding it. Thing I like to do in these pen reviews, generally watch other people's reviews just to see what they say about it and if I'm completely off base compared to what they're saying. And I noticed on Doodlebud's video, he mentioned that on the nib, he had side stamping. I do not have any side stamping on my nib. Really, honestly, doesn't matter, but I like to point out any differences I see. Everything else he said, I would agree with, though. This has alternating resins of a sparkly, more green, and then kind of a grayish blue. Very attractive pen. It's the sparkle in the alternating resin, it really brings everything out. I would say the brown probably looks a little bit more vintage as well. Mag 650 is available in 4 different colors at the time of this recording, and they are all shown here on this graphic. So why don't we get some measurements for this? All right, so let's get a weight. I just calibrated the scale, and it's coming in at 26.21 grams. Now this is an uninked weight, but let's see if we can find a pen that's similar in weight. Okay, it's a little heavier than this narwhal. It's much lighter. Much lighter. The closest that I'm seeing right now is this narwhal. It's a pretty decent weight for a resin pen like this. Other resin pens I have are lighter, even with ink in them. This one is the closest one. It's not heavy, at all. It's just, it's got some mass to it. Let's actually get a uncapped weight, since that's the way you would primarily be writing with it. The uncapped weight of the uninked pen is 13.14 grams. And we can do some size comparisons. It's closest in size to this Pen BBS pen I have lengthwise. It's a similar length. So slightly longer than a Lamy or a TWSBI. All right, so if we're going to do a length, so that's 146.3 millimeters or 5.75 inches long. That's capped. Then the length of just the cap is 66.9 millimeters or 2.63 inches. And the pen without the cap is 133.9 millimeters or 5.27 inches. I was going to do a measurement with the cap posted because the Gold Spot website has it, but this is not postable. The length of the grip without the threads is 21.5 millimeters. And then the grip with the threads is 27.3 millimeters. The diameter of the grip at the smallest point is 10.5 millimeters. And then the wider part of the grip up here, it goes up to 11.2 millimeters. The widest part of the body itself is 13.5 millimeters. And the cap, the widest part of the cap is 16.3 millimeters. Since this is a new pen, we're going to go ahead and flush it out first, just in case there's any leftover ink or oil in the nib or the feed. I have a cup with water and just a drop of dish soap and some plain water here. So we'll go ahead and flush it out. All right, so I'm just going to swish it around in there for a second. And when I say a drop of dish soap, really that's all that's in there. You don't want to get it too soapy. And all right, let me grab my bulb syringe and we'll flush it out. This, of course, is something that is really probably better to do over a sink, but I'm not bringing you in my bathroom because I have a hard enough time controlling the environment in here, much less in there. We would definitely get some random family members, I am sure. All right, let's do some plain water just to get any of the soap out. This is just a normal bulb syringe like you can get from the pharmacy or baby care sections. And a couple more times just to be sure. There wasn't any ink in there, so all right, so that should be good. I think we're pretty well dried here, so we'll put the converter back in, and I'm going to use the Waterman Serenity Blue. This is the ink I've picked to test new pens with when I first get them. because it is inexpensive, pretty predictable, easy to get. It's a nice color. There's nothing wrong with the color. We'll go ahead and use this ink miser just in case there's any water left in the pen. We won't contaminate the whole bottle, so fill this up. All right, looks like a pretty good fill. This back on. All right. Minor blue situation there. Can't avoid that. So I did make a new pen day sheet that's got all the information that I want to capture on it, and then some space on the back for next time I put ink in it and check in later on. Little space for a picture and the measurements and that kind of thing. But before I fill that out, I want to do some test writing just in my Rhodia notebook of randomness. And I will need this later. Anyway, let's do that. Let's see if this works for me as well as I see it work for other people. Ooh, these always make me so nervous. I'm always afraid it's just going to be a disaster. This is my 10-second impression so far. The nib is very soft, so it's very brush-like, more so than any other Flex pen I have, which I like because it's a different feel for sure, even compared to the Cross Flex. It's more, and maybe this is what people with vintage pens, the vintage Flex pen I have could not really be considered a wet noodle. And maybe this is what they're talking about with wet noodles. It's very, it's almost, yeah, I guess it's almost like a noodle, but it's pliable, and it goes right back to this very fine point. There's not only is there very little resistance, but it is almost like this nib is not metal, like it's some sort of brush material. It's, now I got ink problems. And this is the problem most people have with modern Flex pens, is the ink keeping up. So now we have no ink. Feel of this nib, if it can keep up, it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to love this. If it can't, I'll probably still like it. Honestly, this is pretty cool, but it's going to be a lot more frustrating to use. So it's the most really flexible nib I have, even compared to the Regalia Cross Flex nib, but the spread or the maximum width is not as wide as some of my other pens. All right, why do we not have ink here? Let me just really push some ink through. Let's see, we'll probably get some globs to start with. Or still no ink. There we go. We've globbed. Yeah, it's very, very pleasurable to write with. I wish I could do a better job of explaining this Flex. Writing with this pen for the first time, and this pen's responsiveness has my brain in a complete tailspin, and I'm really not doing a great job of describing what it's like to write with this pen. Let me put the camera down right in front of it. Maybe you can see with the tines what it's doing. Maybe that'll make it a little clearer for you guys. To really show you what I'm talking about with how this pen flexes as opposed to some of my other pens, I think a side view is going to show it best. So let me show you. Watch the tines here. If I can hold it right, it's hard to do at this angle. Do you see how the tines themselves are very flexible? Like they're actually flexing. Please excuse any random railroads because I'm doing this at a very strange angle. But it's the actual tines themselves that are part of what make this pen feel so soft. I'll try it right here. See how much they actually bend? I'm almost going off the camera here, sorry. Again, strange angle. So if you compare this to this vintage Parker Lucky 14 with a 14 karat gold flex nib, it does have some flex to it, but the tines are not. I mean, in some ways they are because the nib on this is actually a little curved back. The regalia from the side, if you watch the tines here, you can see that they do not flex. The actual tines are not flexing like that Magna Carta does. So it's a very different writing experience. Again, ignore the railroading, please. It's like I'm almost writing upside down and backwards to try to show this. Again, the tines, they're spreading, but there's not a lot of flex in the actual tines. And then to give you one more example, I will show you Fountain Pen Revolution. This acts a lot more like the regalia in that the tines themselves are not flexing. They're spreading, but they don't actually flex as much. I think that has to do with the material of the nib. In the case of the Fountain Pen Revolution pen here, and also the Regalia Crossflex nib, they're both stainless steel nibs, and they're not going to be as flexible as a 14 karat gold nib. Brand Magna Carta. And it's a mag 650 with a 14K flex nib. It's also got an ebonite feed. Colorway is cyanic, which I do really love the color of this pen, and this stacked resin I really, really like. This is a gold spot exclusive. Purchase date was 8/13/24. Price. This pen is $450. So it is not inexpensive by any means. 5-year warranty. Reason for purchase. I would be lying if I didn't say that Doodlebud's review of this pen also influenced me pretty severely towards buying it. I was already thinking about it. The Mag 600, I saw a video for back in November, I think of last year, somewhere around that time. Goulet Pens did a review of the Mag 600, and it was the first time I saw somebody actually writing with a flex pen on a YouTube video, and I was just in awe, and I wanted it very badly. But I read some reviews that said it had some issues, and then I found out about Fountain Pen Revolution pens, and $40 was a lot easier to swallow than $350. Well, $350, which is what the Mag 600 cost. So, and then they came out with the stacked resin version of the 600, and I was interested in that because it's got that whole retro feel to it. Then the 650 came out. Doodlebud did a review of it. I was already kind of saving up for it, and then that's how that happened. So it was a planned purchase. It wasn't a impulse buy by any means. This I would call a flat top, even though it's got a rounded back because it is shaped like a flat top pen. The filling system is a converter or eyedropper. The site says it's postable. It is not postable. It's a screw cap, and it takes 2 turns about. The closest pen size that I have is my pen BBS 495. It's almost the exact same length. But weight-wise, the closest pen that I have weight-wise is my Narwhal Original. So nib comparison. This is the Magna Carta. I'm just going to put Mag 650. I'm just going to do some of this stuff with some different pens. Initial impressions. So I need a cap weight and an inked weight. Inked weight is not very useful because I probably used up half the ink in this pen already. Just pushing ink out. But let's just do it for the heck of it. Inked weight, we're going to say 26.5. There's not much ink in there right now. Should probably do that when it's full. I'm going to let it go though. Okay, and then the cap weight is 13.09. Okay. There, we have filled the sheet out. I've lived with this pen. I've written with it for 20 minutes? I don't really feel qualified to give some sort of massively expert opinion on it, other than to say that I find the flex in the nib to be unique and interesting to the point where I don't regret buying it. I do have some concerns about the ink flow just stopping while writing, because that happened probably 5 to 6 times while I was writing with it. And I imagine that that would be extremely frustrating over the long term. So I am hoping that after I write with it for a little while, it starts behaving a little better. Hopefully I can get that straightened out, because I do very much like how this pen both looks and writes when it's writing properly. It is quite pretty. All right, guys, I'm back. It's probably been about 3 days since I filmed my initial impressions of this pen. And since then, I've completely used up the Waterman Serenity Blue that was in there, and I re-inked it with the Iroshizuku Kiri-Same, which I just found out is being discontinued. So that is another gray ink that I love that is going to be no more, and I am devastated. I'm very sad about it. I did order another bottle, but anyway, focus. Okay. I inked it up with the Kiri-Same, and I used an entire converter of that, and I just re-inked it. I think after writing with it that much, that the issues I was experiencing the first day were likely due to, and this might be my superstition or something that isn't based in fact at all, but I feel personally like pens that have ebonite beads are a little sketchy to start with. It's almost like that ebonite feed needs to absorb some ink, or something needs to happen there for the ink to start flowing properly and consistently. Because since then, I haven't experienced any of the issues that I had when I did the original writing sample on camera for you guys, where it just stops altogether. And that is a big positive, because that was really my only complaint about the pen at that point in time. But I do want to show you guys that it's acting properly now. So I'm going to do a transcription in this little Daiso notebook. I'm just going to fill up a page with writing. I'll fast forward it so it doesn't take too long, just to show you guys how it's actually acting at this point. And then I'll give you a couple more closing thoughts, and we'll wrap up this review of this Magna Carta Mag 650. I'm going to put the mic down and give you guys a better listen to what the feedback from the pen sounds like. This is not the neatest handwriting in the world, but I was trying to keep a quick pace going while still doing some flex to simulate what normal everyday writing with this pen is like. And in this writing, with this ink on this paper, it did not railroad at all, not one time. And the ink flow didn't just stop like it was before. And that has been my experience with both the Waterman ink that was in it before, after I got probably 3/4 of the way through the initial converter fill. So I'm ready at this point to give my final thoughts. My final thoughts are that I am beyond impressed with this pen. It is very comfortable to write with. The flex that it gives me is unlike any of my other flex pens, and it feels like a unique writing experience that I didn't have before. I really do love writing with it, and I reach for it all the time now. It is my favorite pen at this point in time. Is it worth the price? So that's questionable. It is priced properly. I don't think it is an overpriced pen based on the market values of pens. But I'm sure if you wanted a 14 karat gold flex nib, if you really were looking for that experience, I think that you wouldn't have too hard of a time finding a vintage 14 karat flex pen that is less expensive than this. But then you're dealing with vintage pen issues of a sack and being limited to the kind of inks that you can put in it, or maybe strange filling systems, or just general availability. So obviously no one should buy this pen if they can't afford it. But if you can afford it, if you're interested in flex pens, if this kind of experience is interesting to you, I can say with confidence that it's worth buying. I can't say anything negative really about this pen at all. It did give me a good scare during the initial writing sample when it was stopping entirely just partially through writing. And I even debated with myself about editing that part of the video out altogether, since the pen is working so well now. But I do think it's important for you guys to see that that was part of the experience of inking up and using this pen for the first time. And it could potentially help someone else down the road if they're having the same issue. So I'm keeping it in. Other than that, I have read some reviews online about this pen saying that it doesn't keep up with the ink flow. That hasn't been my experience, and I would guess that with a dry ink, it probably would have problems, but that's basically any pen out there, flex or not. That hasn't been my experience. If you do decide you want to buy it, be sure to look for any available affiliate codes. I was able to use another YouTuber's code on this pen for, I think, 15% off. I know those codes don't work on all brands, but it did work for this particular pen when I was purchasing it. I do feel like this pen is less fussy about what ink I put into it than this Regalia Cross Flex nib, which will lean towards railroading or lean towards feathering very easily with many different kinds of ink. And I know I've only put 2 different types of ink into this Mag 650. And so I'm making sort of a big generalization, and maybe one that I shouldn't be making. But I know that the Regalia Crossflex nib does not handle the Iroshizuku inks as well as this Mag 650. And there is some feathering on this paper, but this is a little Daiso notebook that I picked to write in primarily because of the size, because I didn't want to fill up a whole huge sheet of paper with writing and bore you guys to tears. So I'm personally extremely happy that I purchased this pen. I have 0 regrets, and I don't foresee myself having any regrets as long as it keeps performing like this. So there it is, the Magna Carta Mag 650 fountain pen with a 14 karat flex nib. It is getting a very big 10 out of 10 thumbs up from me. Thanks again for stopping by, and I hope I was able to give you guys some useful information or answer any questions that you might have had. But if you do have any other questions about this pen, feel free to ask in the comments. I would be happy to share any information that I didn't cover in this video with you guys. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.